This experiment started off by taking a DNA from my pet snake and splicing it together with the DNA from my pet squirrel. We took their samples to the laboratory where we spliced them together and fertilized eggs. We let our chicken to keep them warm throughout the process, and when they were born we couldn't believe our eyes. This is the world's first squirrel snake. We like to call them squake. They love cow's milk very much. They have the body of squirrel that is small and the skin of a snake. They are slow but have a great instinct. They dig holes and climb big trees as well, but they cannot jump as high as the typical squirrels. This experiment started off by taking DNA from my pill bug that I pulled under my grandmother's bed, and took the DNA from a heritage mole. This was my best friend's mole. He loves them so much and giving them a kiss every morning. So sweet, right? They crawl and search something to hide on. I took their samples to my laboratory and spliced them together and fertilized the eggs. And after a few months, what you are looking at is the world's first pill mole, or a holy roly moly. They are half insects, half mammals, and as you can see they still retain the characteristics of a mole while looking similar to a pill bug or a roly moly. We made about 1,000 of them, and some of it go into the wild. In this summer experiment, I decided to take DNA from one of my pet lungworms, and splicing it together with the DNA of one of our gigantic centipedes. We took samples to our laboratory where we spliced them together and fertilized eggs, and after a few months they were born. You are looking for the world's first centiworms. They like to be under the cold water, but they can live and survive both land and water. I suggest do not handle them or pet them as they're pretty dangerous, but they are really cool. I think this was a great gift for your ex-girlfriend. Happy keeping. Let's start it off by taking DNA from one of my giant wasps and splicing it together with the DNA of one of our ants. We took their samples to the laboratory where we spliced them together and fertilized eggs. And when they are born we successfully created a wasp ant. This ant is about 3 inches in diameter and has a half-inch stinger. Here's it with the turtle for reference in size. They are extremely aggressive and I would not recommend handling them. We gave many of them to our friends, but the rest of it were back into the wild where they belong. This experiment started off by taking DNA from one of my pet ducklings and splicing it together with DNA of one of my pet mice. We took their samples to the laboratory where we spliced them together and fertilized eggs. And once they were born, they are some of the most interesting creots we have ever seen. They have legs like ducks, but the body of a mouse. They are extremely cute and playful. As you can see they are also very quick. They love to jump around, and they also like to run on their spinning wheel. We made about 5,000 of these and we gave a lot of them to friends, but kept many for ourselves. This experiment started off by taking DNA from my man, a war, and splicing it together with the DNA from our pet electric eel. We also added DNA from a tadpole. We took their sample to our laboratory where we spliced them together and fertilized eggs. And then they were born. These are electric eel poles, and yes, they are very electric, but they are absolutely beautiful. We made about 3,000 of these and gave some away to friends. We let others go back to the ocean where they belong. This experiment started off by taking DNA for one of my pet spider and splicing it together with the DNA of a caterpillar. I took their samples to my laboratory and spliced them together and fertilized eggs. And when they hatched, they're some of the craziest creature I've ever seen. We're looking at the world's first spiderpillar. They are half caterpillar and half spider. As you can see, it retained its spider-like legs, but still has the body of a caterpillar. I've made about 1,000 of them and let many of them go into the wild. This experiment started off by taking DNA from one of our pet polar bears and splicing it together with the DNA of one of our pet penguins. We took their samples to the laboratory and spliced them together their DNA and fertilized eggs. And after a few months they are born. This is the world's first half polar bear, half penguin, and as you can see it is perfect splice between the two. They are extremely playful and friendly, and love to just hang around if given a few way to choose, and kept many of them for ourselves. This experiment started off by taking DNA from one of our pet black cats and splicing it together with the DNA from one of our pet raccoons. We took their samples to our laboratory where we spliced them together and fertilized the eggs. And after many months they were born. You are looking at the world's first half raccoon half cat. We call them catcoons. They are extremely playful and intelligent, but they are a little wild as you can see. They retain the raccoon hair, but the cat-like bodies. This experiment started off by taking DNA from one of my giant hornets and splicing it together with DNA of one of my giant black lobsters. I took both of their samples to my laboratory and spliced them together and fertilized eggs, and soon after they were born. What you are looking at is the world's first hornet lobster. Half lobster, half hornet. It crawls like a lobster and stings like a bee. It's pretty fun laying eggs to be held. As you can see, it's already reproducing. We send many of them back into the wild where they belonged and kept a few for ourselves. This experiment started off by taking a DNA from one of my giant moths, splicing it together with the DNA of one of our very cute Pikachu. We took their samples to our laboratory and spliced them together and fertilized eggs. And after a few months they were born. After we had this caterpillars, they began to make cocoons, and once again after a few weeks they hatched, and the first ever Pikachu moth was created. This extremely cute and fuzzy animal is one of a kind and one of our favorite creations yet. I've always wanted to have venomous mammals, and so I extracted DNA from one of my pet king cobra, and I extracted DNA from one of my pet deer. After months we finally spliced their DNA together perfectly. We fertilized their eggs, and after another set of months they begin to hatch. You would not believe what they look like. This snake-deer hybrids are the world's first venomous mammals. They are extremely venomous, but also cute and cuddly. This is not what we expected, but I like the way it turns out. This experiment started off by taking DNA of watermelon plant and splicing it together with DNA of our home chickens. We took the samples to my laboratory where we spliced them together and created a whole new species of plant. We are able to successfully plant the eggs, and they grew to egg plants. As you can see, the eggs that grow on this plants are similar to a chicken eggs. This process can revolutionize on what we know about farming food. I've been trying to make my own dinosaurs, so I took DNA from my pet frog and spliced it together with my pet snake and fertilized eggs. After about 5 months they are born and hatched. What is so particular in this creature is that they look like snakes, but they have arms and legs, and here are some baby ones. They grow about 5 to 6 feet in length, but they are not perfect yet, so I release them to the wild and free them.